What's up, guys? No lives here. Today I've decided to give you guys my prediction on the prices of a couple of the new weapons from the new Armory collections. The first two I'm going to talk about is the AK-47 Consequence of the Jinn and the new op, the Souvenir Flame. Sorry, I'm probably not saying that correct. But they're both from the Arabesque collection. And the other two I want to talk about are from the Spytech collection. The Glock 18 Ghost Protocol and the AK-47 AUTOEXEC. I'm going to compare these four weapons to a few weapons that I think they may be fairly close in the market with and possibly share some of the qualities of how they're going to price themselves in the beginning and throughout the first year, let's say. So I just want to first start off by saying all four of these guns are beautiful in my opinion. They really cooked with all of these guns. This gun in particular, the AUP, when you get it in battle scarred, I cannot find an inspect model right now, but when you get this in battle scarred, it is a beautiful deep orange bronze color, and it just totally looks completely different. So that's something I'm kind of looking forward to is hopefully getting my hands on a super high float for this one. Um, the other thing I want to mention before we get into this pricing is this is all my opinion, okay? And I like to watch markets and I like skins and I'm gonna give you my best reasoning for why I feel like the prices are gonna be the way that I think. And I am in no way telling you guys, what it's gonna do and how to invest your money or not. I'm just saying my opinion, and this is totally just, me showing you why I think what I think. Okay, guys? I also want to mention that I'm very happy to hear your comments, and if you disagree or if you agree, just leave a comment, No, please don't hate, but I mean, I may get some of these extremely wrong, and you can tell me exactly why you think that. All right. As of today, these guns aren't in the market yet because they haven't been out for long enough. Um, but I think that changes in the next day or two. So we'll see very quickly if my predictions are right, wrong, close, or nowhere near. Okay, so let's dive into this. We're going to start with the Glock 18 Ghost Protocol. I think this is an amazing looking skin. I think there's room for lots of cool crafts on it. It's red, so there's a lot of people that, love their red loadouts, and I think this gun is going to be very sought after. That being said, um, I want to suggest comparing it for a minute to the Glock 18 fully tuned. I know some of you are going to hate me for this, but I think the Glock 18 fully tuned is actually better looking than the Ghost Protocol. I know, I'm gonna catch some hate for that, but I think that there's just so much going on here, and to me that looks like Gengar. Like, I think this is a beautiful Glock, and it's also a newer Glock. It came out with the Dead Hand collection. So I want to kind of just compare the pricing on it when it first came out to now. All right, so here's the Glock 18 fully tuned, and this is the gun that I'm going to be comparing to the Ghost Protocol. I think that you know they're very similar guns, in my opinion, in like popularity. Um, they came out, it's been 3 months, so within the same 3 month period, 4 month period. So the market is going to be similar with the amount of people buying and the amount of people holding. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to look up the chart for this guy, and that started in May on March 20th. Sorry. And so you'll see here that it sold like a bunch of times at a high for at 750, sold for 5, sold for 6. Um, so I just, the first couple days, I just um, I just had 600 to start just to make a baseline for us. And I honestly think that, you know, obviously the first couple days that any gun is out, people are going to overpay. People want the brand new stuff, and a lot of people don't really care about paying an extra $100 because they know it's going to go down a bit. Um, and if we follow this graph, for the first week, it hits its high. Okay, so within 7 days, it hits its high at 751, and then immediately after hitting its high, um, within 3 days, 4 days, it sold for $300. Okay, that's a pretty big drop. And if we're going to predict the same thing within 1 week of it being on the market, it's going to hit an all-time high, then we can also predict, and if it follows that trend, you kind of know what's going to happen next is it's going to drop quite a bit. Only one sold for that amount, but a lot sold on the way down. Um, and then within the first couple days in April, some sold upwards of, we were hitting around $500 on average, like an average number, a bit lower. But within a couple weeks, there was some highs, but you never really know. One sold and three sold as opposed to like 14 sold for $309. So I'm going to bring up my prediction list here, and don't hate me for this. But so I have them started at, fully tuned was at around 630. I guess I put it at because it did go to that high, but quite a bit sold around there. So we put it at 630. Um, now I I kind of think that they're gonna kind of perform the same, to be honest, and that's my opinion. So the numbers here are a little bit different, but for the first 4 months, 4 months, sorry, I think that the Ghost Protocol is gonna perform quite a bit like this. Um, the reason I think that, and the reason I think that it's not gonna be more, is I think that there's gonna be more people going after this crate than people bought this gun from the dead hand terminal. Okay? And when you buy from the dead hand terminal, someone had to pay pretty much this price, if not more, to get this gun from Valve. Whereas some people get lucky when with the Ghost Protocol, and they can get one for free. So, I don't expect the Ghost Protocol to see these kind of spikes, but I do predict it to kind of follow this trending line at first. Start around the 600 mark, maybe a bit less, and then trend down to, you know, $300 in the first month. And then I do predict it to go down more over 2 months. And, you know, the difference in the value you see here is the fact that I think it's not going to stay as high for as long because so many people are using the armory credits to get, you know, these new guns. Um, but yeah, so that's my prediction. I think, if you can get one around the 300 mark, that's kind of I think that's a good price, and we're talking factory new. Um, if you're a person that can't wait and needs the new iPhone every time it releases, well, you might be looking at a pretty big overpay at around 600 bucks. Maybe a bit less, but that's my that's my best guess on the price for the Ghost protocol. All right, next up we're gonna talk about the AK-47 AUTOEXEC. Um, I think my breakdown on this is probably gonna get me the most hate, but I'm gonna go ahead and share my prediction with you guys. Um, First of all, it's a really cool gun. Um, there's a lot of room for some cool builds and stuff. Um, but in my opinion, not as cool as other options for the AK, including the other new AK that we're going to talk about after. Um, so that being said, um, I'm going to compare this to an AK from a previous collection from the Armory. Um, and that AK, don't hate me for this, is the Nouveau Rouge. Okay? Now, hear me out. This gun also came in an armory. It is a purple. Okay, hear me out here. But this case had, um, correct me if I'm wrong, it had a gold in it. And I really actually thought that it was a red. I don't know why it's showing as purple. But I think it's gonna be very similar to the market that we see for the AK-47 AUTOEXEC. Okay, there's a few differences here that I want to talk about first, because I'm going to show, the first year. I'm not showing how it's performed in the last year. It's how it's performed in its first year. And I know that a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, this was before the crash, right?" Um, I have adjusted the prices for that. I don't think it's gonna, you know, I don't think it's gonna sell for 500, $600 right away. I could be wrong, but if we follow the price, let me pull this up actually. If we follow what we see here, and like, there was quite a bit that sold. Two sold at 5, one sold at 540, you know. So immediately when it was released, that's what price we're seeing here. So it was, at 500, 600. Um, I think that the AUTOEXEC and factory new is gonna, come out more at the 350 range on release for a factory new one. Um, and again, these are my best guesses, basically. Um, this is what I think is gonna happen. So After that, I think it's going to go down to around 280 within the first month, and it's going to kind of sit a bit lower than this. It's going to sit around 250 for that, probably the first 3 months. And then here's where my prediction gets a little bit different. I think it's going to drop. I think this new AK-47 AUTOEXEC is going to drop for a few reasons. A lot of people like the other AK more. Um, Also, in my opinion, I don't see this being like a hero AK. It's not anything crazy. Um, so I think it's gonna, drop a bit faster than this. And also, you got to remember that this was before the crash. So me saying, it's gonna sit around 150, or sorry, 250 for 3 months. It's not that far off, okay, of this chart. But I do think that within 12 months, I think you're going to be able to pick this up in a really good float for around $150. I don't see this being an investment, at least not for the first year. Um, but, you know, that's just me. Um, but you can see here that in the first year, it didn't, or the Nouveau Rouge, there was some big sales, but I think these were probably, really low floats. Um, Maybe stickers on them, I don't know. But, now we're sitting at you can pick this up easily for $100. If not, $80. Still a pretty good float. Um, so yeah, in my opinion, the AK AutoTech is not going to be a great investment. I mean, if you want to play with it, like if you wanted to play, like go for it. If you want to make, a cool craft with it, for sure. Like it is a beautiful gun. It's just I don't think it's gonna perform in the market as well as some of the other options. All right, next, probably my favorite new gun from the collections is the Consequence of the Jinn, the AK-47 from the Arabesque collection. I think this gun is just beautiful. Um, it's got gold accents. It's got a beautiful um, dragon design on it, flames. I just think that it's gorgeous. But anyways, I think this gun is going to perform really well, and I think it would be a good long-term hold, in my opinion. Um, Maybe wait, at least maybe even up to a month before you pull the trigger on one if you weren't lucky enough to unbox one yourself. Um, the the weapon that I am gonna compare it to, again, you guys might not like this, but I'm gonna compare it to the Monster AK. Um, I think they're very similar in a lot of ways, um, especially the hype. I know that this gun it was the only red. It was, it was from um, the armory, the same thing, but it was the only red. So that being said, some people might say, well, this one should be more or this one should be less because, you know, being one, maybe more people got this than would get from if there was two reds. And other people are saying that maybe less people are gonna buy or are gonna, use their armory credits to get this one as they are now using it to have a chance at two reds. So it's kind of, it balances out. In my opinion, it's it's how that it performs is what I'm really looking at. is how it performs in the market, not exactly the amount. Um, but that being said, I'm gonna pull my graph out here and my chart. Which one? Bear with me. Oh, that was the last one. Okay, so here is my predictions. Um, we're gonna look at the, you know, where it's gonna hit its all-time high at the beginning. Um, in my opinion, again, we're gonna look back at the AK-47 Be the Monster. Um, again, I've adjusted the prices a little bit because we're, after the crash. Um, so prices are going to be a little bit lower that people are willing to pay, in my opinion, for, a new red from the armory. Um, so you can see here that Be the Monster, it was released in October of 2024, and within the first uh, week, less than a week, it hit its all-time high at 155, or sorry, 1,550. Um, and then again, you see that after that all-time high, it's about 1 week, almost exactly, to when it hits the low, just like we saw in some of the other guns. So, a little tip here that we're seeing is, you know, once the gun starts dropping from its all-time high, and you can see in the first few days, you'll see a pretty big drop, pretty drastically overnight. Um, and that's when it's all-time high, and it's probably a good time to buy about 7 days in. So a week after that is a good buy opportunity. And, again, not financial advice, just what I'm seeing. I'm talking about what I'm seeing. Um, so if we, you know, see this similar, I'm gonna bring up that chart again. Um, I'm gonna show you that I personally think that this is gonna be one of the best guns to buy and to hold on to. Okay, in the next, you know, so we can see here at release, I put it as 1,000, not 1,500, because I don't know if it's gonna go quite that high, maybe 12. Um, but in 2024, this one hit 15. Um, so within a month, let's see on this chart, it went from 15 down to, its lowest, about 6. What's a month from there? In October, November? Let's get the exact date. 12th to November 12th. Okay, so it's sitting right around 100, 800, yeah, 899 and 750. So we put it down as 750. Um, and I think, with it starting at 1,000 as opposed to 1,500, I put it a little bit lower than half. And again, maybe I should have put 450, but I think after a month you might be able to secure one at 400 again. Um, that being said, within 3 months, this one was selling back up. I have that wrong, I guess. I had it down as 650. But within 3 months, you know, sitting around the 800. So I do think that, the fact that that was before the crash is going to have a lot to do with the number difference. Um, But also, I do think that within 3 months you might be able to snag one of these factory new for 350. Um, this is supposed to say 400. Um, so after 6 months, I think probably about $400 you'll be able to snag one for. And if we start at 1,000 and Be the Monster started at 1,500, it's kind of similar, um, because we kind of dropped down in May to what, 500? Yeah, about 6 months later it was around 500. And then obviously you see these spikes; those are usually um, rare numbers or really low floats. Um, but after 9 months, you see it kind of went back up, roughly 750 area. Okay, and then it started climbing again, and it actually made it back to 1500. Um, and so that being said, I think this gun is going to perform quite like that one. And so where it says 400 to 600, um, could be a little bit more than that. Here's where this gun specifically and the next gun we talk about, I think have a little bit of a more volatile um, market incoming, because I think a lot of people are going to go for this op from this collection. So a lot of people are going to be putting a lot of armory credits into this collection. Probably one of the most in a while, in my opinion. So there is a risk here that there's going to be a very high supply. Okay? So if the demand doesn't meet the supply, we all know the market's going to come down until that finds its equilibrium, so to speak. So in my opinion, I don't think it's going to have this big of a spike back, but I do think it's going to get, back up from the 350, 400. I think it's probably going to hit 600, um, maybe a little bit more. It might get back up to the 1,000 like this did. If it really follows the trend of this, maybe it hits 1,000 in a year, and that's where it will kind of cap out at. But yeah, so this estimate isn't perfect, but these this um, Arabesque collection, I think, is going to be very volatile because we don't know how many of these weapons are going to be in the market. Okay, and in my opinion, I think there's going to be a lot. So that being said, um, let's get on to the next one. Okay, last but definitely not least is the new op Sovereign Flame. Okay, I cannot begin to explain how much I like this op. Um, I'm gonna say it. The one opportunity I think that they missed is putting a red ruby right here, just like how you see in the on the Queen's Gambit with the blue one. I think it should have been called the King's Flame, and I think they should have put a ruby in it, should have matched. But that's just me. Um, Either way, this is a beautiful gun. A lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, are calling it the new Hydra, right? Um, it's going to be the Desert Hydra of our generation. That being said, I don't disagree fully. Um, I think the Desert Hydra is just a little bit out of range for some people, price wise, and I think this holds up to that standard of design. Um, the textures on it, um, the shine, just everything about it, I think is gorgeous. Um, so believe it or not, I just said, okay, fine, let's compare it. Let's compare it directly to the Desert Hydra. So that's what I did. Um, it's not going to be the exact same type of comparison here because when I'm talking comparing it to the Desert Hydra, one, I'm not comparing it. I mean, it's came out what in 2021, September. I'm not comparing it for 5 years. You know, I'm not trying to see how much it's gonna, appreciate or depreciate. What I'm concerned about is really the first few months up to the first year. Um, and so when we look at this chart is kind of insane. So one sold right away for $11,000, almost 12. And I think that was a very low float. It was one of the first ones sold too. So somebody just didn't care at that point. Somebody just wanted what they wanted and they bought it. Okay. But that same week, quite a few sold on the way down from one, two, three, four, from 3,000 right down. And again, we're looking at months because this is so small, so I'm trying my best to show you. But it went, from around 3,500, let's say, because a few were more than that. So I'm going to pull out my chart that you're all going to hate. So I put it down as like 3,000, okay? Because a couple sold 3,500, but then this one sold within that same first couple weeks, for 4 grand. So I put 3,000 because it went down to, you know, 1,900, and it kind of sat around, for the first month. It was around 2,500, 20, you know. So I put it at 2,300 on my chart for the first month, and then for the first 3 months, you know, right down to 2 grand, because it did hit 2 grand there and pretty much there again. In May it sold for 1,700. So, that's more than 6 months, but we're looking at, kind of how it performed. And then it spiked. Was it 2 years later? Look at that spike. You see that? And then it came back and it sat around this $2,000 to $3,000 mark for a long time. And then before the crash, it actually was sitting around the $4,000 mark. So sorry I am doing a bit more evaluation because this one's been for so long, but just, just to give you like an idea of timelines of like holding skins. Um, this is like always the best time to buy. That first year, first couple years on this one were like good buys, almost double. So bringing it back to the new op. Sorry, I got a little bit sidetracked there. Um, I think it's gonna for factory new. There might be like some crazy low floats that sell for, you know, crazy amounts, but I think realistically, the price of it right away is gonna be because people are spending a lot to get this gun specifically, and that's why like with the AK, some people might get it trying to get this one and then sell that one off to recoup some of their money. So there might be a lot of those AKs in the market. Okay. Whereas this gun, a lot of people are spending a lot of money to get one, And a lot of people want it to just have it, you know? So I could see this one going right away for 1600, if not a little bit more. And then I think after a month, it's probably going to settle back down, to the 1,000 and then maybe even drop below 1,000. Um, Keep in mind that these numbers are just kind of rough. Even looking at them now, I'm like, it will probably say 1,000, and then after a year, this might go back up to 1,600. But I think it's going to follow the first year of this graph pretty solidly, which means, you know, if you're looking for a quick flip, buying it right away isn't isn't the move because for this first month, it's pretty straight down. And then once it hits the 2,000 mark, it kind of bounces back up. And that's because the supply ran out. And then so the people that didn't want to sell it started selling. And now it's sitting, for pretty much a long time around the 2,000 mark. I mean, this one, yes, 1,700, but also the float isn't the best. If you're looking at a factory new, a lot of people want better floats, which, get up there really quickly in price. So that being said, when you're looking at collecting stuff like this, when you're gonna pay that premium in the beginning, make sure you're paying it for something that's gonna hold. Um, like, if you're gonna pay that kind of money, try to get a good float. Try to, get, see the difference here where when people first bought these, they didn't see a big difference between, you know, 0.069 compared to a, 0.047 or zero 0.01. It wasn't a huge difference then, but I'll tell you, makes a huge difference now, years later. On one, your price, two, the liquidity of it, how quickly you're going to be able to move these skins if you wanted to. Um, but yeah, sorry that that took so long. That's a super long video. I'm gonna have to edit it and cut some out. But I just wanted to give you guys a full detailed rundown of what I think um, about a few of these new skins from the new Armory collection. All right, and feel free to drop a message, drop a comment, complain about what I said, agree with what I said, disagree with what I said, yell at me. I'm here and I'm ready to hear it. I got strong skin, thick skin. Okay, guys, and I appreciate you if you did watch this video. I know it was long. If you made it to the end, uh, thank you very much. I'm new to YouTube and I want to keep continuing to make these videos. I love trading, buying, selling, and I love Counter-Strike now. So, um, yeah, thanks guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.